Casting on YouTube and Twitter Spaces. So this is the first talk for the Subnet Summit, and we're thrilled to have Chorus One be the kickoff. I just as a just to set the scene here a little bit, we're gonna do a present. Chorus One's gonna do a presentation, and then we can take questions in the chat. And then we can also take questions over Twitter, either in the space itself or via DM. So we're happy to be as available as we can across the social stream. So I'm going to give Thalita and Lou a great introduction. So just as a way of intro, Chorus One. I followed since early 2016 when the founders were doing Epicenter Bitcoin and then rebranded. So you guys can all go back and check out their early work, which is like sort of seminal in the space to give them some early props. A bit about our presenters today. Luis Nunez is the venture analyst at Chorus One and for Cosmos Governance. He has a background in civil and environmental engineer at Imperial College London. He fell in love with crypto after researching blockchain implementation to reduce carbon emissions. So thanks Lou. And Thalita Franklin is a researcher at Chorus One with a bachelor's of computer science and an MBA in capital markets and derivatives. Before joining the crypto space, she worked in TradFi, we'll forgive her that, and building and exploring insights from data analyses and reporting tools. So Thalita and Lou, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys for inviting us. I'm very happy for being here representing Chorus One, joining this amazing event together with Lou and also Irving, who is not a speaker, but also helped a lot putting all this information together.
Thank you very much.
So first, I'd like to get a little bit in depth of the introduction of Chorus One, complementary to what you already said. We are a team of 50 people, fully remote and globally distributed. We operate in 3 interconnected pillars. The first one, that's our main product, is we run validator nodes. We are one of the largest and longer lasting validators in most of the leading blockchain ecosystems. And we have built a strong network of high performance validators and foundations, builders we are all the time trying to collaborate with. And we are currently live on 40 plus networks already, with more than 800 million in stake with public and white label nodes. And that's our main focus business at Chorus One. But we also do ventures, as you already mentioned, who Luis is part of the team, with 49 deals in 2+ years. We look for projects we really believe in to invest long-lasting and build these long-lasting partnerships. And mostly we look for projects in 3 sectors, in networks, interoperability, and middleware layers. We have invested, I think now, more than 8 million in early stage deals. But we are also very strong on the research side, but I think it's a part of our brand now, the part of the team that we are actually. And we do this in-depth research on emerging topics, usually technical topics as MEV, liquid staking, and even gaming. We have linked here on the gaming side the recent article that Irving published on the gaming on Avalanche Summit, on the Avalanche ecosystem. And we also shared our periodic public reports, quarterly insights, annual review on the staking ecosystem. Also linked here if you guys are sharing the slides with the people, with participants on the event, they can access. And another thing that I think is really important that we do is our work on governance, because we are one of the highest validators in participation, in terms of participation in governance, and also shared here a recently published article on the overview of governance on the Cosmos ecosystem. What we would like to cover today is basically to share our perspective on the app chain thesis and why app chains are the future, how successful chains handle this relationship with validators, and also the pain points that we have seen following up with the least successful projects. Also, we have an idea what can be applied to subnets and what is different, bringing this knowledge from the Cosmos ecosystem that we have been participating for a few years now. And also would like to share how to assemble the perfect validator set in our vision, in our opinion, and without our knowledge of it. And also what Chorus One brings to the table. Now I'd like to pass the word to Luis.
Thanks, Talita. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So I'll first start talking about app chains and why we think they're the future. So especially because the subnets ecosystem is also moving towards the app chain thesis. So yeah, maybe for those who are not aware of it, I can give a brief summary of it. But basically, the ideas of the app chain thesis started to brew back in 2015 when some problems started to emerge in the shared block space ecosystem of Ethereum, and most of those novel ideas started in the Cosmos ecosystem. It was called Nuclear back then. But the main thing about the app chain thesis is that you have full customization at its core. This means that builders can decide on practically anything and the difference on the stack. And an analogy I like to use is to compare horizontal scaling and vertical scaling to superheroes. If you think about it, vertical scaling, the Hulk would vertical scale, and in Ethereum, you would need to compile all these apps that share the same power, the same block space, and then the Avengers horizontally scale. And as we all know, this is a more efficient way of advancing. But I think that this horizontal scaling has only reached this full potential thanks to interoperability. And that is why the app chain thesis is starting to gain traction. In Cosmos, you have IBC. In Avalanche, you have Avalanche wrap messaging. But the key thing lies on full customization of the entire stack. And even so, we've started to see Ethereum ecosystem and the leading L2s also approaching to the app chain thesis. We saw this with the recent rebranding of Optimism to Superchain, where they basically stated that the solution was a multi-chain future. And yeah, we're also of the thought that if you think about it, L2s, once you try to decentralize the sequencer set, the sequencer is basically what feeds the data to Ethereum. Most of the solutions right now are centralized with a single sequencer. Once you try to decentralize this, you end up having an L1, which supports the app chain thesis anyway. So yeah, maybe next slide, please, Talita. Great. So I also wanted to talk about the importance of validators in the ecosystem, since we're aware that in a novel ecosystem such as subnets, builders, as they should, are focused in building, but we also find that it's important to remind a few things and showcase why we're also important to improve the ecosystem as a whole. So the first thing to mention is that validators are one of the most battle-tested parties in the blockchain ecosystem. A lot of the innovations that have appeared in the space are thanks to validators. We can brag about our CCO, Felix, who was the first one to mention liquid staking online. But there's a lot of different implementations that are there thanks to validators. And it's also important to mention that VCs often refer to us for advice and DD, And in some cases, like us, we're validators, but we're also investors. So I think what's the key message here is that strategic interaction with validators is very important. And then maybe, well, we'll talk about governance a bit later, since in Avalanche there's not an established governance framework yet. But in Cosmos, for example, validators play a key role here. And then maybe also to showcase that validators can also help on tokenomic reviews and others, like testing modules and upgrades for the builders, and just ensure that everything runs smoothly. So another maybe wise thing to do is to incentivize validators since testnet, since the start, and this will help you find vulnerabilities and improvements that can be done, and avoid the big problems that you will have if you try to solve them in mainnet. Maybe some examples on how these best chains do handle validators. For example, DYDX, I think, is a great example on how they collaborate with validators. As it seems now, the DYDX exchange will be mostly held on validator machines, and then these validators will cast some of the transactions on chain. And this is a novel approach that couldn't be possible without the help of validators and without smooth collaboration. And then just to showcase the freedom of the app chain thesis, talking a bit more about tokenomics, like you can use inflation to bootstrap a network, and then once you have a built network, convert those rewards for stakers instead of using inflation, using transaction fees and other novel things like MEV. And this is, for example, Sommelier decided not to have inflation at the start and reward with a larger portion of the DeFi strategies to validators and delegators.
Yes, and totally agree, Luz. And I think some of the pain points that we have seen for networks that are struggling to scale, for example, that we think it's important to mention. The first one I would say is communication, because not all networks participants, for example, if not all networks participants are aware of announcements that you have, if you have not really good, clear communication channels where validators should look at when you release announcements or when you release upgrades or any relevant events in time. Usually you have to do this in a coordinated manner with validators, so the whole network can act as a wave in the same direction. So we have seen some trouble related to communication. And also on the maintenance side, for example, with bad code hygiene and release practices. On the hardware requirements, also, for example, including less common setups like SGX or GPUs that makes harder for validators to join the networks because they don't have the possibility to use that hardwares, or because you have problems with updates. Also on the decentralization side, I think a good example here is to create a project that starts with proof of authority and you have no clear criteria or a clear roadmap to decentralization to become a full decentralized proof of stake. And with misinformation or misalignment on tokenomics, for example, because as Luz mentioned, it's really important to have a good way to incentivize and to keep network participants engaged and working to the growth of the network.
Awesome. Thanks, Alita. So yeah, so maybe to get to some of the important parts, we also think that it's important to mention from our experience in Cosmos, what do we find can be applied to Avalanche subnets, and maybe what is different. So I think that the biggest difference is the Avalanche consensus, which is different and in many ways superior. and the gist of it is that it's more scalable and it can adopt way more validators, whereas Tendermint consensus normally struggles after 175 validators, which is now what the amount of validators that we see in the Cosmos Hub. But this means that we have different validator profiles, and that the potential to run validators at home is higher and less expensive. And this is great because you can have more decentralization, but you require good documentation, open source products, because you are expecting that your people running your nodes are less technical. As a side product of this, also delegation is more competitive because there's way more validators. I think the C chain in Avalanche currently has around 2,000 or more. So yeah, you have to compete against others and attract validators. And also the staking contract in Avalanche is time-based compared to Cosmos or others where it's infinite, which means that the staking product is less sticky by default. You have to re-engage with delegators that are delegating. And I think this is great because it creates network effects and communication between validators and their delegators. Another thing that's, in my view, superior is that in subnets, subnets have the ability to combine multiple virtual machines to run in parallel. So for a subnet chain, it's easier to become multi-chain and to truly adopt different VMs from different ecosystems and run them all in parallel in a subnet. This is possible in Cosmos, as we see with Evmos, but it's not out of the box, I would say. Something that is also different is that there's no established mechanism for governance. I can assure you guys that the Cosmos ecosystem is very active in governance, and in some ways it's great. This is mainly because of coin voting and validators, also to showcase that we also have a non-technical role here, where validators basically take the majority of the voting, and every different L1 in Cosmos has its different a different governance framework. So I think highlighting this point, I think that subnets have the possibility to learn. For example, something that I would implement is having different professionals vote on different types of upgrade or governance proposal. And I think this could combine coin voting and others to reach some sort of multifactorial consensus that can englobe the entire community. And yeah, maybe as a thought, also talking about the consensus, I think that in Cosmos, for example, right now you have shared security, and new builders can rent out that security instead of having to assemble a validator set and spin up their whole L1 by themselves. But we still don't know the limitations of this shared security, because we don't know how much can validators scale, the validators of the Cosmos Hub scale to run X number of chains. And I think that's an interesting thought, that with Avalanche consensus, this would not happen, because you can onboard as many validators as you want to distribute the work. You of course need some validator tooling, but we know projects that are already doing this, like for example Saga. Yeah, that's pretty much it in this slide, Talita.
Actually, I wanted to jump in just a bit because you're covering basically all of the work at Landslide. So what you mentioned about the Tendermint consensus and the Avalanche consensus, so we're open sourcing our software today. So the first step is what's called Landslide Core, which is basically Cosmos SDK minus Tendermint, and Cosmos app chains that will be able to deploy essentially outposts of their software on the Avalanche stack, they'll be able to do it with our SDK. And we're basically connecting IBC to Avalanche Warp messaging in a meaningful way. So that, like, we can go into that a little more, but I just wanted to give it a plug right there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like the core benefit of using Landslide. I think that it's amazing that you can, as a builder, decide to use Avalanche consensus, but maybe you're because you see the advantages of it, but maybe you're more familiar with the Cosmos SDK, especially because it's older and there's more open source material. And then thanks to you guys, you have the possibility to combine both and create an even better app chain.
Yeah, amazing. Congratulations on the open sourcing then. Is it like being open source is right today, like exactly today?
Yeah, in a couple hours, yeah. We're going to go through it.
Amazing.
Nice.
Cheers.
Okay. Well, with all that being said, we would like to share how to assemble the perfect validator set on our opinion, of course. The first thing that we believe that's important is we would recommend trying to find your validators from your target community, because validators are your partners. So they are part of the ecosystem. They are the backbone of any decentralized network. They can be ambassadors of the project on the local community, or spread the word, let's say, of what your project does. And at the same time, don't expect them to be your PR department, we would say. And look for a mix of individual and professional validators, because watch out for the track record and also to achieve security guarantees. Also, seek to extract value to grow the network, because as we mentioned, like networks, validators are working in the space for a long time now. They have really good relationships. They can introduce you to high value node operators that they also know, or even investors. For example, creating shared marketing or media campaigns, partnering for content creation, all this kind of tools that you can use from your validators. Another thing that we think it's a really good strategy is when you try to engage the validators, the point of view on the investment side, so they can almost guarantee the buy-in from the validators to become part of your network and work harder and harder to make the project grow. And look for tax saviness and ask for feedback from them, because this is their specialty. I'd say they are the masters of infrastructure. They will be able to help with any kind of feedback on the technology side. And try to reach out early. This is our last suggestion.
Awesome, thanks. And maybe some closing thoughts on the status of the Avalanche ecosystem. And well, as Talita explained at the start, what we bring to the table, aside from being reliable node operators, is that we also provide investment in ventures and in projects that we believe can bring something valuable to the space. And we also have a great research team that helps us in all these decisions, and also open sources most of the research and for free to everyone that wants to learn about everything. And maybe just to close and to provide a thought on the Avalanche ecosystem, we've been discussing this with many teams, like Landslide, for example. And we know that the Avalanche ecosystem right now is mostly smart contract developers, mainly, and most people are developing subnet EVM for comfort, because normally they're coming from Ethereum. But we advise that if you truly want to push the limits, also don't be afraid to look for chain developers, look for software developers that like crypto, and help them, show them the way to contribute to the Avalanche Hyper SDK. We think that open source, that would be even better. And we think this is the best way to build a great community around the Avalanche subnets and provide a better bottoms-up approach to help everyone that's trying to build. And of course, having the Avalanche team as a centralized team that can help anyone also. And yeah, we know, just to shout out to some teams that we know are doing this great. Of course, Landslide was our first connection that we saw between Cosmos and Avalanche, and we think that is great. And other projects that we know are also contributing greatly are GoGoPool and Saga, and some others. And just to mention that we're in close contact with all of these teams and help them provide our expertise as node operators to make the subnet ecosystem the best place to build an app chain.
Yeah, I think that's all that we have planned in terms of content, but
Great.
we'd like to open for any questions.
Yeah. So before we open it to I see some requests on Twitter. So we'll take those soon. But I just wanted to acknowledge you guys and Chorus One in general for creating an amazing working environment for startups and for protocols. I've, full disclosure, Chorus One is an investor in Landslide, but I would say that we've, like, you guys and your team are some of the best in the space. Like, I've been through hundreds of pitch calls, and for people who are listening who are, raising capital, you can instantly tell on a call in 5 minutes whether or not the people on the other end even have the mandate or even understand what you're even talking about. And from jump, Chorus One is like, the research behind it is very clear. So they understand the thesis, they understand the app chain thesis. So, you pointed to the importance of, like, how you're going to bootstrap your validators. It's kind of like bootstrapping your investors. And you can vet them, but you don't want to have adversarial validators who just dump or go offline. So, I just wanted to touch on that. So,
Yeah, totally agree. I think even the point of view of myself, who contribute as an employee to Chorus One, I think it's been like 1 year now, and it's just a pleasure to work in Chorus One because of the team, how technical they are, how really engaged with the decentralization thesis and with the whole crypto philosophy. I totally agree. I understand what you mean.
Yeah. One question I have for you is around Saga. Lou, I know you and I were talking offline about it, but can you go into why Saga and what this brings to the space?
Yeah, sure. So Saga, for those who don't know, is a Cosmos one, but it's also outsourcing its work to Celestia, and recently to Avalanche ecosystem, and before that to Polygon Supernets. But Saga provides a way to make it easier, basically, to spin up your app chain. So they believe in the app chain thesis, and then they provide tools for builders to spin up their app chain without the need of having to assemble a validator, for example, as a validator set, or others. So in Celestia, for example, I spoke before about decentralizing your sequencer set. In Celestia, they will collaborate in doing so. They basically enable, they call it chainlets, but it's similar to spinning an app chain with a set of validators that can handle, thanks to some tools that they developed, they can handle a lot of different chainlets. I think the other day they posted that it was over 1,000. So yeah, shout out to the team there. And with Celestia, for example, they will enable to decentralize sequencers and to spin up a lot of rollups. And in this framework, validators would essentially become a decentralized set of sequencers using the incentivized token of Saga. And then they have recently partnered with Avalanche, and they provide also a similar toolkit, but optimized for subnets and to help also builders spin out their subnets in a faster manner and allowing builders not to care about security and having open tools to develop your subnet. The Gogo Pool team is also solving this problem for subnets with a different approach. So yeah, I think there's a few great teams that are collaborating and trying to make the whole community and the whole ecosystem better and open sourced for the builders.
Amazing. Can you talk a little bit about where you see governance going in Avalanche as a Cosmos head?
Yeah, sure. So I think as I said before, subnets have like building a new subnet. You have the ability to do whatever you want. In Cosmos, there's already a few rules, like for example, coin voting, but this is being explored differently with interchain security and, for example, Neutron that will have, I think, a different DAO system to vote and to make decisions. But if I were an Avalanche subnet, I would try to go to the leaders in each app chain and see what are they liking, what are they not. I, for example, vote for most of the Cosmos app chains, and what I find is that it's very hard for one team to be capable of knowing what should they vote, and especially technically, but also like what's going on. There's like 40 plus 50 plus chains. There's maybe 60 plus proposals every week. So if you want to scale this, it's not very scalable if you're only having, let's say, validators to vote. So I think that there's definitely some lessons that can be learned, and my idea is that there should be some sort of multifactorial consensus where different parties should vote on different types of proposals. In terms of, yeah, that's what I would do in if I was a subnet and in the subnets ecosystem. It's super new, so I would take the learnings from other ecosystems and apply them the best way possible.
And when you say multifactorial, are you suggesting that certain parties have a certain vote and certain parties have a different type of vote?
Yeah, that could be definitely a cool implementation. I think it definitely needs some sort of work. I like the framework that coin voting has on Cosmos, because at least you are ensuring that people that care about the system, like validators, are the ones that are voting. So at least you have something there. But I think that this shouldn't, like, validators shouldn't be the only voters, especially because sometimes we don't really know about what's going on with an upgrade of an app chain or a smart contract or something like this. So I think like maybe there should also be like a federation or a group of developers, then a group of people that know the ecosystem and act more like politicians, let's say, and yeah, just to make sense of the tremendous amount of votes that go on in the ecosystem. And I expect the same to happen in Avalanche once there's also hundreds of subnets running.
I wanted to ask about one of your earlier slides, which is the pain points of least successful chains. Can you go I assume some of the folks listening are unfamiliar with POA chains. Can you go into what that process is and why that is a pain point?
Sure. So the proof of authority chain is basically a blockchain that is launched in a permissioned way. So instead of being open for anyone to run a node and participate as a validator, the network starts with a specific set of validators that they choose from. They probably go through a relationship on the human level, and usually they do this looking for some safety way of launching the network as well. So perhaps they are not too comfortable with opening the code for, let's say, open sourcing the code. It's usually an issue, or even on the security as well, trying to avoid any kind of misbehavior from validators, participants. So what they do is they define the set of validators before and usually align on how the delegation process will be, because usually the network still don't have a token launched, so how this process will be. And so this, we don't think it is very healthy way to launch, because we believe in complete decentralization and permissionless way of launching networks, and we think it is possible. But yeah, mostly the pain point is the decentralization factor, I think.
Understood.
I don't know, Luis, do you have any additional comments on that?
No, I think that's pretty much it. In Avalanche, they call it elastic, I think. When once it's permissionless, and then once, I think most of the subnets right now are permissioned, and then I think some have the plans to go permissionless in the future, go elastic. And yeah, I think that this is also great and provides different functionalities for different people and different builders. Maybe you want to build a TradFi subnet and you want to really control your validators are compliant, for example.
Yeah, shout out to Spruce. You guys all saw that launch, right? That's a T. Rowe Price permission subnet.
Exactly, yeah.
I think it is understandable to launch it this way. It is probably much more challenge. It is a bigger challenge to launch, like to coordinate a real decentralized network since the start. We already have the technical parts that you need to worry about, the code of the network, and you still need to coordinate on a decentralized way. It's probably a huge challenge. So I think it is understandable, but also defining the path to decentralization is important, I think.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm gonna see our Twitter question left. I'd love to find out what your thought is on like interchain staking. Can you explain that to people a little bit and what the status is?
What do you mean by interchain staking?
Yeah, this is something Sunny has proposed. I'm not sure it's well known.
Like having mesh security.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. You go, Talika.
Yes, I can go there. So mesh security is kind of an evolution, is a proposal for modifying the mechanism that is known as interchain security. So the way it is live today, interchain security is a mechanism that allows Cosmos L1 chain to be launched without defining its own validator set. So instead of assembling and going out and search our validators and engage with all this work that we have been discussing here today, you just rent the security from another chain. Today, I think you can do this from the Cosmos Hub, and by doing this, you share the revenues from either the native token, your native token, or an application token in case you don't have a native token on that chain. So this would allow for better revenues for validators on the Cosmos Hub chain, and also reduce the complexity for the new projects to arise, and kind of improves liquidity in some way, because then you don't need to deal with like every validator will need to stake in every chain. So it's becoming, I'd say, harder and harder to get a real decentralized set of validators because of this spread liquidity. But the point of ICS the way it is. So is all the validators, all Cosmos Hub validators would validate all other chains that we call the consumer chains. So it is a replicated security. The suggestion that Sunny did is, instead of all validators needing to validate for all consumer chains, instead you'd create a mechanism that kind of enable restaking. So even something similar to what EigenLayer is doing in Ethereum, where by staking, if you are a validator on the, or if you are a delegator on the Cosmos Hub, you may opt in to, not opt in. You kind of gain this right to redelegate to other validators who are securing another chain. So almost like, instead of replicate the whole security of the hub, you would just re-stake the stake that is already on the hub also to secure other chains. So increase the cost of corruption of that chain without deploying more capital. Is it clear? It's a bit subtle, but
I'm familiar with it. I'm trying to kind of break it down very quickly for people who are unfamiliar with it. So a delegator can delegate to more than one consumer chain at once, right? With a single token.
Yes, this is what I understood.
Right. So what that means for Avalanche is that type of thing would happen over Avalanche Orb messaging.
I think that to make it, like, if you want to break it down even further, with interchain security, you rely only on the security of the Cosmos Hub. With mesh security, you can decide on relying on the security of different sets of validators on different app chains, and you could use IBC or Avalanche Web messaging to message between each other. But I think that in Avalanche, you don't have this problem because the Avalanche consensus can adopt instantly as many validators as you want. So I think that the mesh security is a solution to scale the interchain security of the hub. And also, if you want, for example, you can use the security of Osmosis or any other app chain. But I don't think subnets will face this problem. So I think that that's the reason why Avalabs and are not as prone for shared security.
Right. Understood. Are there any questions from our Twitter community? I'll sort of adjust the audio settings here and just ask them. Hold on a second. We're welcome to take questions from Twitter. All right. I had some other questions to go over for some of your research, actually, in the vertical scaling in Cosmos. Would you like to go over that, or would you like me to stay away from that?
Let's hear.
Yeah. So Xavier Megan wrote an article in July of last year, which discussed the different vertical scaling solutions that were at the time being developed in the Cosmos ecosystems to sort of complement these horizontal scaling solutions. So just like you said earlier, Hulk is the vertical guy and the Avengers are the existing horizontal scaling solutions. So we're seeing interchain security, and you mentioned Celestia and Saga, and we haven't touched on Dimension a little bit, but maybe you can go over like a high level about that, and I'm going to take the question from Twitter, and I'll get his question, and we'll hit both of them at the same time. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
Hold on just a little.
Okay.
All right, youngest Salim, what's your question, sir? Hopefully he'll connect. Otherwise, maybe not. Why don't you take the interchain vertical and horizontal scaling while this guy connects? Go ahead, Lou.
Yeah, sure. So I think that Cosmos has, of course, the horizontal scaling at its core. So it's super easy to launch a new app chain with the Cosmos SDK, and Avalanche also has this idea at its core with Avalanche subnets. There is a point where execution and settlement layers of the blockchain, for example, have also need to scale, and in order to provide a very complex application, like for example a game. So you also need to, within those horizontal scaling solutions, app chains, you also need some tools to scale vertically. And yeah, as you mentioned, you have Dimension, Celestia, and Saga that help you provide, and it's more leaning to the modular thesis, which is like breaking down every every aspect of the blockchain to make it scale in a better way. But yeah, I would say that those are the key takeaways of how one would scale. I think Celestia, for example, and Dimension are helping in the scaling of rollups that can connect to any type of app chain, and that rollup can provide, let's say, more a separate execution, so that the speed or other aspects of the application work faster or more smoothly. And then Saga can help decentralize those type of sequencers and provide other tools. For example, maybe Talita, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Uh, I I was just thinking that actually Dimension and Celestia is such a beautiful marriage, let's say, because Celestia doesn't make any sense of the execution part. It just take care of guaranteeing that the data is made available for light nodes. Uh, and on the Dimension side, it's just it takes care only of the execution and optimizing for building our own rollup. So I haven't tested myself, but it looks like that it is super easy to launch your own rollup using Dimension. So I'm pretty excited about trying it perhaps soon.
Yeah, as as I'm listening, I'm reminded of Goon from Ava Lab's most recent, state of the Avalanche, and he is really hammering on the fact that all of these different layers that are kind of separate in other chains are all kind of already present in the Avalanche architecture. Like, it's not a single chain, not a single sequencer. There are, three chains in Avalanche, each with a specific function. And as we see, like the sort of horizontal subnet architecture kind of already built in, it's a lot less bootstrapping of these, external, basically what are almost like external adapters to the main net. But yeah, so I think we're gonna.
I think that's.
Go ahead.
Oh, just to comment on that, I think that's totally true, and Avalanche already has the tools to avoid having to use other ecosystems or other tools. So yeah, that's mainly why we also believe that subnets is one of the best ways to go.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on one of the earlier things you said about in your presentation about encouraging and enrolling new developers to get out of the EVM.
Exactly.
We have another guest that's coming up that's going to talk about Move and how they're bringing the Move VM from Aptos, pulling it into Avalanche, and it was the same sort of thing that we saw with Landslide, is that the COSM WASM and the WebAssembly VM is such a vastly better virtual machine than the Ethereum virtual machine for a ton of reasons. So we're happy to bring the weirder virtual machines into Avalanche as well. And yeah, Hyper SDK released in December is a super interesting what they call a highly opinionated a virtual machine to do like an amazing set of operations. So are there any
For
other
me, just
questions? Oh,
a
sorry, go ahead.
last comment that I'd like to share about is the point of incentive. Um, what how can I say that? On Avalanche and all these features that is being released and the way that subnets are emerging, it just feels like you have a modular ecosystem. It's still easier to build the incentive incentives, the incentive layer for all participants, because this is a complexity of the modular way. You need to guarantee that all layers are being correctly incentivized, and it feels like on the Avalanche it becomes easier because of the way that things are being built, like already optimized for this kind of challenge.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. There's also like a corporate branch of Avalanche, which helps like kind of explain the thesis to corporations and institutions. And like, where is that in Cosmos?
I don't think there's.
Yeah, yeah. We'd love to see it. So if you're listening and you're a corporate institutional head, you know, there should be a branch of that specifically for the Cosmos ecosystem as well. A
It's
business roll
important.
up. Great. So this has been super insightful. Luis, Talita, thank you so much for your time. Would you give like a promotion from where you'd like listeners to go to learn more about your work and how you'd like them to reach out to you?
I'd like to suggest anyone who wants to follow our research topics and our public art. All our articles are public and shared on our blog, our website, chorus.one. And also, we'll be there. We'll be attending Avalanche Summit in Barcelona early in May. So for those who will be there, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Let's have a coffee. You guys already know a little bit more about what Chorus One does. So we are validators. We do research and also ventures. So if you are looking for validators, or if you're looking for investment, or if you want to talk about any research topics, please come talk to us. We would love to know you and your projects. We really believe on the Avalanche ecosystem. So yeah,
Great.
that's it on my
Wonderful.
side.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for coming to the summit. We'd love to have you back. I'd like to make this a regular channel because the process of the speed of subnets, and especially with AI, like we're going to see a ton of content that's just going to be hard to keep up with for people. So having a channel just aimed at subnets, it will be super cool. So thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
Yeah, really appreciate the invite. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nathan.
Yes.
See ya.